Welcome to Legislative Update. I'm Representative Ralph Boehm from Litchfield.
And I'm Representative Erica Layon from Derry. We'll discuss some vetoes and bills signed by the governor, but first...
Okay, first thing I want to bring up here is that on August 3rd, right there, is a education fair where there's people there from homeschool, micro school, charter schools, private schools, and learn anywhere on the EFA stuff, so you can learn anything you want about sending your kids to a different school or whatnot. But I mean, you might like your public school or not. It's everybody's different. Okay, so, and then I just want to come back to another thing. There's a group called Citizens Count, which rates legislators. They say they're nonpartisan. They are partisan. You can tell by the way they ask the questions or give the results. Instead of saying I was for something, I was against something. No, so it's just the wording. They are not a bipartisan. So when you look at that, you might want to consider, wait a minute, where are they actually coming from? So,
and it's always good to do that with every group who's doing that, because either people are sharing their bias, or even if they don't know what it is, it's always good to read for a little bit of understanding to see where they're coming from.
Right. So first thing today, we're going to be doing vetoes and bills that have passed as much as we can. But I want to show you how you can do this yourself. So remember on nh.gov, we go to government, the state legislature, and then we come down here, find the bill. So we'll go to advanced bill search. And then we go skip all this and go over to the second column here for this general, and then look for codes, for example, and we'll do it quickly if signed by the governor, because there's more of them. And because we're going to go over as much as we can, but every time we've gone through the list, wait a minute, maybe we should do that one. So here's the list, okay? And so you can see all the bills that were signed by the governor. So you can, scroll through that, see something that you might be interested in, and look it up. There was one here, I thought it was kind of funny. I think it was 514, yeah. Relative to ballot column rotation, because somebody asked us how the column's done on the ballots, the Democrat first, Republican first, or whatnot. But I went just for the dickens of it, because they changed it this year. So you can hit on PDF or HTML. I use HTML better. And when you look at a thing, if anything that's lined through, that means the current law and it was taken out. And anything in bold is stuff that was put in. And if you read this, I read it, I'm not going to read it, but I couldn't make any sense out of it, but it's up to the Secretary of State to make sense out of it. And he was the one that probably put it in that way. But anyway, but be careful of that, because also some of the bills are maybe only one sentence. Add this to, so you really need to look at that law to see what it's added to.
And sometimes they do the repeal and replace. So instead of making it easy to see, they've just deleted that whole section and put it in with the new words.
Right.
Those always frustrate me, because I like to know the changes.
Right. But like I said, some you think of the bill and it's only like a couple of sentences, and it's actually adds a lot to the bill, but you have to look at the whole bill. Okay, so now vetoes. Okay. HB 52, HB 200. Congressional redistricting. Remember, we had discussed this a little bit before. Apparently, my comment here is the governor wants the incumbents to win, because so he vetoed it and it went to the court, and we're back where we were in CD1, which means we're surrounded by CD2, and so it doesn't. Okay, another one. We covered this, HB 275.
Yeah, so this one's the Declaration of Emergency Powers. It's really a hard thing to look at, because COVID, we had such a slow-moving emergency, but this also covers things like nuclear war or a nuclear meltdown, which we were afraid of with that false alarm this week. So right now, it has it that the governor can declare up to a 21-day state of emergency and just keep declaring it again and again and again and again. We had come to an agreement where the governor would be able to extend it up to 3 more times, so a total of 84 days. And after that, you're a quarter of the year through. If there's still a state of emergency, then the legislature would get together and the legislature would all positively say, yes, we have a state of emergency and this is what we're going to do.
Right.
Because right now we can get together and if both houses agree, we can end it. But if you're continuing a state of emergency, you should have more people agreeing to continue it than the other way around. So that was really disappointing because
Right.
this one we handled pretty well. We don't know what the next state of emergency will look like.
Yeah, and even if the legislature's not in session, the governor can call it in session. So it's not a big deal, but I don't know why the governor is against it. I guess because you never know who's going to be governor. They can just keep calling it an emergency, whether or not there is one or not.
And if there's something like only a quarter of the people can show up because it's been so catastrophic, you can suspend the rules. There's things you can do
Right.
for the legislature to be able to be effective.
Okay, the governor also vetoed HB 1022. Pharmacies can dispense ivermectin.
Yeah. So that one, we actually had an amazing expert come in and testify in my House committee. I'm vice chair of Health and Human Services. And there's no guarantee that it's going to be a treatment for somebody, but using ivermectin doesn't stop you from taking anything else. It doesn't stop you from any other treatment.
Right.
And the biggest part is if it does work, it only works early. So it's really disappointing that he vetoed that. But we'll talk later about off-label medicine protection. So at least there is a silver lining.
Yeah, and in the last week or so, I found out that, like, some medicine I take, like metformin, helps if you got COVID.
Mm-hmm.
It so might be why when I got it a few months ago, it was very, very mild. I didn't even have a fever or anything. But so you never know what's going to work, and they're still finding out things that are going to work. So anyway, okay, HB 1131, facial coverings in schools. So apparently your school can still force face masks whenever they want. The dickens with what the health department says, or state or federal, they can force. Now, at our last deliberative session, a teacher at our deliberative session thanked the school board for removing the mandate. It gave her more time to teach. And we all know the damage that is done to our children. So,
And the bill, too, it didn't say that you can't have a mask requirement. It just pushed it up to the state public health. And if we're talking about public health choices, that makes more sense than outsourcing that to our school boards. And that's the other thing. Senator Sherman says that he has data about this. He said that he has data that it does protect someone other than the wearer outside of a healthcare setting. But I keep asking him for it, and he's not giving it to me. We put a bounty out just for somebody to give me that data, because if it exists, I'll sing a different tune. But right now, I don't. If anybody knows about it, email me. I want the data.
Yeah. HB 1625, and this is a biggie, repealing the prohibition on entering or remaining on the public way adjacent to abortion clinics. Now, there was a law saying you could be there, and now you can't be there. And the law was made to be a lot like Massachusetts' current law, but that was vetoed.
And it was vetoed because they said that nobody's enforcing the current law, so we might as well leave it on the books.
Right. Okay. Now, for bills signed, and you can look up, like I said, you can look up some other vetoes, but not really that more important. But bills signed, this is a cute one. HB 116, relative to personal delivery devices and mobile carriers. This is like FedEx, if they wanted to. There are these for cities that drive around the sidewalk delivering packages. Nobody driving them or anything. They're not on the highway, on the roads. It's just like sidewalk deliveries. And I don't know if my argument on these self-driving vehicles is when somebody gets hurt or some animal gets hurt. I mean, especially when they come to the self-driving cars and stuff. We know that here in Litchfield and New Hampshire itself, this time you got little duckies walking across the street. Now, is one of these self-driving cars going to notice that's a duck and not a leaf? So I wonder how many. I'm waiting to see that happen.
And how much roadkill this will stop for, too.
Right. I mean, I mean, we know that. How many times here in Litchfield we stop for turkeys? And not the drag drivers. No, the real turkeys. Okay, HB 230, relative to child daycare monitoring visits and the appeals process for child daycare workers. If you have child care, you might want to look that up. But there's bills that are passed. Relative to procedure for adoption of a minor child, this makes it easier for, like, the parents die or something, and the grandparents have been taking care of the child or another, they can more easily adopt that child.
Or if an aunt or an uncle is adopting because the parent has just realized that they're not the right fit, it makes it so family adoptions go faster.
Yeah. And this one goes with the emergency powers, but this passed prohibiting the suspension of civil liberties during a state of emergency. Now, we all know what happened. You couldn't go to church, but you can go to the liquor store. Mm-hmm. So anyway, this prohibits that. HB 514, I showed you that ballot column rotation. So it's basically got to be done by your Senate district. And there's 24 Senate districts. But the problem is, like, in our Senate district, there are 6 polling places. And every time they've all pretty much been different. So I don't know how they're going to do that, but I showed you that. If you can figure it out, we'll let the Secretary of State do it. A couple of motorcycle things, because I'm a member of the New Hampshire Motorcycle Rights Organization. They stuck a bill in a couple of years ago prohibiting OHRV travel and dirt bikes on Holt Road Marsh in Concord. So this repealed that prohibition. So dirt bikes and OHRVs can use that property in Concord, which they've always done before. HB 1000, prohibiting motorcycle profiling. In other words, it keeps any state, local police department, sheriff, for stopping the motorcyclist just because they're on the motorcycle. So, and we know that's being done, even though the speaker even testified on this that he was stopped one time for riding the motorcycle. But
And then we had HB 1003, which prohibits healthcare providers for refusing to provide care or services based on patient vaccination status. I'm not sure if you've seen, but there's even family organ transplants that are being denied in other states because they're saying that if a parent wants to give their child their kidney and one of them's not vaccinated, that they're not going to allow them to do that. And that is prohibited now in New Hampshire. And we had a really good discussion in our committee, and the doctors on both sides of the aisle were talking about how it's just against medical ethics to deny somebody care for a choice like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's your choice whether or not you want to get vaccinated or not. And there might be reasons why you don't want to. And it might hurt you doing that transplant. I mean, another one, HB 1040, establishes a commission to study revenue alternatives to road toll for funding of improvements. Right now, it's your gas tax. That's the funding for, other than the toll roads. But, I mean, that's your funding for road maintenance, state road maintenance, and the towns and whatnot get some. The problem is electric vehicles. How are we going to tax them for using the roads? I mean, it's not up to, especially when they want everybody to have an electric vehicle. Yeah. But then where's that electricity coming from? The coal plant. But then
well, someone has to pay for the roads, right?
I know it. So there's a commission to look at that, how we can do about doing it, and maybe just do it by your registration based on your mileage. I mean, anyway.
So there's House Bill 1097, which is relative to the taxation of income of New Hampshire residents when working remotely for an out-of-state employer. So I did that for many, many years, working for a Boston employer, but working from home because we got more work done at home, quite honestly. Right. So when our state sued Massachusetts to say, hey, why are you taxing people from Massachusetts when they're not setting foot in the state? It was because our law said nothing to say that income earned in New Hampshire is not to be taxed by other states. So now this fixes it, and it says that if you earn it in New Hampshire, another state doesn't have claim to that income. So I think this is a huge win.
Yeah, because I mean, it was actually massive. If you're not in the state, you didn't pay, and that was when I was the same thing as working. I mean, if I was out of state, I deleted that distracted. But then this was happening with the pandemic. All the people working remotely. We need that revenue, so we got to tax them, and this puts it on the books. Now you're against state law. Now the Attorney General is going to, rather than you having to sue Attorney General.
Yeah, I had a funny story that I got audited by Massachusetts because they said nobody works 330 days a year. And I said, yes, I did.
Really?
Let me get you a letter from my boss.
Right.
And he said, oh, she didn't list some of the days she worked.
Oh.
I got an apology letter for my work conditions.
I know. I mean, I did too. I mean, that's when you're salaried. That's why they make you salaried sometimes.
That way the job starts when you take it and it doesn't end until you leave.
I know. Right, yeah. Because I used to go on business trips, and it was, Anyway, now here's the good one. I mean, HB 1157. Now, right now, none of them are, but this bill prohibits electronic ballot counting devices from being connected to the internet. None of ours are now connected to the internet, and they can't be. And that just sets in the law, we cannot do that in the future. So hopefully, that takes care of any questions people have that they're on the internet. They are not on the internet, nor they can be, or it's illegal for them to be connected to the internet. Now 1163, overvoted ballots. Now how this law is going to work, if you says vote for 2 and there's maybe 4 people on the ballot and you vote for 3. That's going to be thrown out, and you can then change it. I mean, the problem, and it'll be hand counted, because the problem is if you make a mistake, and if you do it by pencil in some places they do, and you erase it, sometimes the eraser doesn't take. So that way, also too, if you mess up on your ballot, request another one. That can be easily done.
And that would have caught the problem they had in Wyndham with the really intense folds that gave them the overvotes as well. So it's something that a lot of people in Derry, we have 10 seats, so count 11 on accident. It's good to make sure that your vote actually counts.
All right. And then there's some good ones here. HB 1178, prohibiting the state from enforcing any federal statute, regulation, or presidential executive order that restricts or regulates the right of the person to keep and bear arms. In other words, I mean, the Second Amendment and in New Hampshire and the federal, takes care of that. Also, HB 1455.
Yes, 1455 says that the state of New Hampshire will not be the ones that enforce any federal vaccine mandates. On both of these, it doesn't stop the federal government from sending their own people that we're paying for in, but it means that the state won't be sending anybody that we pay and that we're responsible for to enforce either of these DC mandates.
Right.
And then there's another one that we had saying that if there is a state requirement or even a town requirement for a vaccine mandate, that the state or the town can't make a business do their enforcement for them. It's the same thing. If you're the one that makes the rules, you're the one who's in charge of enforcing it. You can't pass the buck to somebody else.
Okay, HB 1214. That's eliminating fees for walking disability placards. In other words, if you need a thing for your car, like one of your spouses can't walk and whatnot, they're not can't charge you a fee for that. It's a small amount now they charge anyway, but that's done away with. 1234, relative to criminal background checks for an applicant for a teaching credential. This is added, I don't remember, but added some things for it. Also, what this also did, which interesting, was the problem is people used to come to get credentialed in New Hampshire and then not even work in New Hampshire. They go work in another state. The thing is, so that credentialing didn't go far enough, because what would happen if you then applied for a job in New Hampshire, they do another background check. So you can get credentialed, so some states might have been lax on, oh yeah, they got a credential in New Hampshire, they can work here without doing another background check. So that sort of fixes that.
Then Senate Bill 410, we had a lot of discussion about school board meetings and a lot of discussions nationally about
Yes.
people speaking there. Not all school boards give people time to speak, or at least they didn't until Senate Bill 410 passed. This requires that school boards will have at least 30 minutes available for people to make comments that are relevant to what's going on at the board, both at the school district and at the State Board of Education. And it says that they need to be fair about how they divide up the time. I don't think that it would require them, if there's only 2 people, to give them 15 minutes each. But if they have a 3-minute rule or something like that, then it could fill up to that 30 minutes, and they're allowed to go further than that, which is good because some school districts like Darien had a very, very resident-friendly discussion policy and public comment policy, but that had then gotten pulled back. So with this statute, it'll help in all the different towns that don't give people enough time to make their voices heard to their elected school board. And there's another one that came through my committee, Senate Bill 281. It's about nursing home vacancies. The way it was set up was that if your loved one moved out or if they died, sometimes you might be charged the next month's rent, even when they're not there, even if it was rented to somebody else. There was some interesting things about making sure that if you had a whole bunch of things in there, you couldn't leave them and not be charged. So once you move out, or if they get your things out, if you had so many things in there that nobody else could rent it, they can only charge you for another 10 days, and only if they haven't rented it to somebody else. We know that that's a really expensive time of life, and this was agreed upon by the nursing homes as well. So it was just a nice way to set some good, fair rules.
Right.
And then House Bill 1567, it sets penalties for election.
skip 281?
No, that's the one I just did.
Oh,
281 with
sorry.
the nursing home
I wasn't paying
policies.
attention.
I'm just talking like the Charlie Brown teacher. So House Bill 1567 is penalties for election official misconduct. It says that they shall be investigated by the Attorney General. Some of these laws didn't say that anybody was responsible for investigating it before, so we found those problems and they got fixed. There's a couple different paths to resolution. It's not just taking them to jail, taking them to court. They can talk with the town, find a settlement, find a way to basically fix the problem, either with or without penalties. And this goes into effect a week before our primary election. So I think everybody's going to be dotting their I's, crossing their T's. I wouldn't expect to see any problems. But if there is any misconduct from election officials, the Attorney General shall investigate. And then
1466.
so this is one of my favorites. This is, I think, a really, really cool law. House Bill 1466 deals with off-label medication and how doctors can prescribe it. So 20% of drugs are used off-label. Some of these, it's used so routinely, doctors don't even really know it's off-label because everybody's been using it so long for that disease. So we identified those. We identified that some drugs, there's just so much evidence that says that they work and nothing that says that there's any risks. Or there's medical societies that have said, when you have this rare cancer, this is what we recommend that you use. So in either of those first two cases, the medical boards can't take any action against the doctors for prescribing those because that's just routine care. Now, if you have something where there's not that much evidence, or maybe there's some evidence that there could be a risk, there's some drugs that could kill you if they're not used correctly, but they could save you or they could give you time with your family. So there's a thing called informed consent. It means you understand what's going on. You understand the risks of the drug. You understand the risks of not taking the drug. You understand the risks of other options. And you understand the risks of doing nothing. So now a doctor will fill out a form with the patient that shows that they understand that, to whatever level of detail makes them feel comfortable for their insurance and everything else. And they'll put that in the medical record. They can send it to the pharmacist. And then everybody knows that the patient and the doctor understand what's going on, and the medical board can't penalize them for using a drug off-label. They're treated the same as if there was an FDA approval for that. And this has always been a really tricky thing because you don't want to legislate medicine, but you also want to have the practice so that they can go ahead and practice medicine. So I'm actually really hopeful that maybe some other states will also pick it up.
Yeah, it's New Hampshire's right to try. I mean, it's something that works. My granddaughter is a nurse, and one of the comments about nurses is they're there to keep the doctor from killing you. And one of the good examples is doctor comes in and looks at the chart and says, okay, we'll prescribe this. And I said, no, you can't, because they're also taking this, and that counteracting. I've even had a pharmacist, when I'm picking up a prescription for somebody, she's allergic to this. You know? So sometimes, yeah, the pharmacist and nurses are a good place to be.
And we have some nurses that prescribe too, so they have these same protections.
Right. Oh, yeah.
So anybody who's prescribing has these protections.
Right, yeah. Also, there was a one, I don't have it written, but we got a couple minutes left, for pharmacies. They can expand the people that can give injections. So, I mean, they just have to be certified. They don't have to be licensed. The pharmacists can. So,
and it actually added some training things too. Not
Right.
everybody who is giving injections had to be CPR certified.
Right.
I mean,
Oh,
it's
yeah,
good
now
to
they
be
do.
CPR certified if you're just babysitting. So you're
Right.
going to have some requirements. That's a good one to
Because you
add.
can give somebody a shot and they.
I know people that'll pass out just because it's a shot. It doesn't matter what's in it.
Right. They see the needle and it.
Exactly.
I remember when I was in the Air Force, it was the big, strong guys that went in line, and soon as they used the gun, and bam! I mean, it was funny. So hey, we're nearly done, but one I just looked up because we've got a couple minutes left, or a minute. HB 1035, relative to exemptions for school vaccine mandates. Now, if you went to your school right now and say, I need this, my son is not going to take this vaccine, and I got a religious exemption or some other kind of, that had to be notarized. It doesn't have to be notarized anymore. That would, so you have to find a notary, and hopefully the town clerk's open, or somebody at the school's a notary. So that doesn't take away with. And then I'm just scrolling down here to see something else comes up real fast. Also, too, I don't remember the bill, but something you might want to look up. There's a bill for child workers. They changed the age on that. It's actually, and if they're underage, they can still clean off tables, whether or not there's alcohol on them or not. Just have to be supervised by somebody that is. So.
Yeah, that's a great one. It makes it so that the hour requirements are a little bit looser, because not every, we saw the thing about the education fair. Not every kid is showing up first thing in the morning to a brick and mortar school. Some of these kids do have a schedule where they can work later, because
Right.
that's just their natural learning environment.
Yeah, because I remember even Boy Scouts, some kids couldn't come to the meetings because they were homeschooled, and they were being homeschooled at night, so they couldn't come to the Boy Scout thing. So other than that, I think we wrap it up, and thank you, and remember how to look it up yourself, and hopefully see you on election day.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.